Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I'm Iram Zulfikar, and we are here to talk about the second lecture of Drama 2. The last lecture, I understand, have precisely oriented you with the course contents and the course itself, where we talked about the history of the drama, modern drama literature precisely, and we talked about the contents of the drama and the writers that we are going to study in this course. This lecture shall provide an introduction to the literary movement known as modernism, encompassing such writers as Henrik Ibsen, Sean O'Casey, Samuel Barclay Beckett, and George Bernard Shaw. Modernism developed out of a sense that the art forms of the late 19th century were inadequate to describe the condition of Europe after World War I. You can see that in today's lecture we are going to have an understanding of the general historical introduction about modernism as a literary movement. And then we shall talk about the social significance of the modern drama. And the social significance discussion shall include discussion of the causes that led to the modernism, what are the themes that are part of this very era, what are the functions of the writers who have been actively involved in this movement, then what are the characteristics of the modern theatre, what is the contemporary social significance of modern drama? How can we relate the modern drama of that time to the very current life we are living over here in our local settings? What is native drama? Then functions and characteristics of modern drama that will enable you to understand how this drama differs from the literary drama and literary work of other eras. Then the role of Scandinavian drama, because we are going to start with the very first playwright of this course, who is Henrik Ibsen, and Henrik Ibsen is a Scandinavian playwright. So we will start with the role of Scandinavian drama in modern drama, and then the four cardinal sins of modern society that Henrik Ibsen emphasized on in his work, and then we will talk about Ibsen's work too in our second lecture. So let's start with the introduction to the literary movement that is known as modernism. What is modernism? What is this literary movement? How did it start? Why did it start? Answers to all these questions should come up and should be known by the learners when they start studying this very course. Modernism is early 20th century that we discussed in detail in the very first lecture. Through the development of literary history, we can see writers start to become a bit more self-conscious about their work, about what it means to be writing, what it means to choose a certain form of art on the other. They are able to understand, they want to know why are they preferring one form of art on the other and what are the reasons behind. This is happening throughout this era. So you will find the playwrights of this very time are very self-conscious. They are conscious about their work. So the second thing is art for art's sake. Although that this is happening throughout the work being done in the modern drama, that writers are being self-conscious, the modernists really take this idea as far as it will go. And they create these works that are really designed to ruminate on their own position as work of art. I here used the word ruminate. It means thinking over and over again something. Like when we do something in our everyday life, and we do some certain acts in one day, towards the end of the day, we somehow consciously or unconsciously analyze our actions. And if we are not satisfied with any of our act, that will make us think, why did we do it? Or why did not we do it the way it has to be done? So you will find this self-conscious analysis going on, not even as a characteristics of the time, but each character inside the play, and the writer himself will present this very philosophy in his writings too. This is art for art's sake idea of aestheticism. We are really thinking about why we make art and what does it mean. What is the meaning of art? What is art producing? What is art conveying? And what is meant by art that is being produced? This is the focal question you will find flashing in all the works being done during that time. Then the third aspect that needs our attention is the influence. What was the influence that brought this change in this form of literature? Because we in the last lecture we did discuss that drama has its origin in Greek times, and then it evolves over the time and reaches in the shape that we are discussing as modern drama through a certain time period. And there are activities attached, there are movements attached, there are periods attached that brought these changes. But what are those major influences which shape the drama, the difference of drama that we see as modern drama? World War I. World War I is one of the greatest influences that the drama has, modern drama has. It also tends to reflect on what modernist authors thought was a really fractured, frightening situation in the modern world, which is not a coincidence because they are writing right after World War, which was a hugely dramatic thing happening in Europe. Warfare is something that changes not only the generations who are involved in the action, but the generations and generations who are to come after it. So the major influence of destruction, chaos, disturbance, abstract ideas, abstract style, things happening for no reason, no logical rationale behind things happening on stage that you witness in this drama and you will be witnessing and analyzing dramas. All these are basically reflections of the time, a time that is full of chaos, a time that is full of disturbance, a time that is where people are dying for no reason. People are dying not for a fault, not for any error, not for any mistake that they did, but probably as a collective punishment where they are not responsible for any wrongs of the society. So we discussed that in modern drama you will notice that each writer will present a sense of self-consciousness. Writers are very sensitive in this time, where art is not being produced for art's sake. It has a purpose, it has a meaning. It is not only touching on the fantasies and idealism of life, it talks about reality, it talks about the world around, it talks about the world where a writer is living in. So he's reflecting upon those ideas which are affecting his personality and his writings. He's being a kind of reflective surface to mirror the society. So what are the characteristics of the modern writings? More so than any generation before them, including the Enlightenment thinkers, who were really rigid, rational kind of people, modernists just questioned the world around them. Unlike their Enlightenment comrades, they think that you can, what's wrong with the world? You can understand what's wrong with the world, but you might not be able to fix it. As such, they end up being very cynical. They use a lot of irony. They end up not really solving things but pointing out problems. So, the writers of this era, the kind of thinking process they develop as a reflection to the disruption, the disturbance in the society, it has made them in a way that although they are able to point out the problems, although they are able to show you what is wrong, they are not able to fix it. And they convey the similar kind of thinking that yes, you can understand and you can see what wrong is being done, but you cannot correct it. That's the kind of thinking that is being conveyed. So this kind of philosophy conveys their being very cynical in their thinking process as well as in writing process. Cynical, the word cynical that I used is basically refers to fault-finding habit. You are able to find faults with people, with things, with society, with everything around you. But after finding a fault, you do not want, or maybe you are not able to fix it. You are showing your helplessness that things are this way and things will remain this way, although you are very much aware of their being not the way as they should be. So, in order to convey this cynical attitude in their writing, they use quite a lot literary devices. We will be discussing these literary devices in our next lecture in detail, but I'll be touching upon them over here too. There's a lot of use of irony, and they end up not really solving things but pointing out them. Now, what irony means in the later part of the lecture, I'll be giving a precise talk about it. All right. After knowing the 3 to 4 major aspects that one needs to understand about modern drama, we need to understand what is literary drama, who started literary drama, and why literary modernism started, by the way. So this what's, who's, and why's is the second thing that we are going to address. We are talking about literary modernism, which is a subset of a larger artistic movement called modernism that embraces painting and music. However, in the literary realm, it's basically responsible for some seriously bizarre literature produced roughly between the end of World War I and the beginning of World War II. So the drama, the work, the literary work that we will study as modern literature is basically a product of writers who are producing it between the two most traumatic events happened in the world, World War I and World War II. So you are studying literature that was produced between this time when it was the end of World War I and before the beginning of World War II. So you can understand the kind of tension that would prevail in the society. So we will be having a little talk here and go over the who, the why, and the what of literary modernism. There are some pretty famous names associated with modernism, and we will mainly be discussing about 4 of these writers who have Irish and Norwegian background. Basically, one is Norwegian, Henrik Ibsen, and the rest of writers we'll be discussing in our drama in this course are from Irish background. As I discussed in the very first lecture, we will be talking about Henrik Ibsen, O'Casey, Beckett, and Shaw. So, who relates to the writers we are going to study in the modern literature? Now, let's move on to see why literary movement started. It's seen by many people as a response to a lot of the destruction and disruption that caused by World War I. Remember, like I said, that this movement gets going between the two world wars in the world, the end of World War I and the beginning of World War II. So to give a little overview of what happened in World War I, in fact, it was so upsetting. It was actually a way more destructive than it was predicted, because people who are involved in World War I, these parties who were involved in World War I, technology played its major role. Technology that was being used in World War I was not the way it was predicted. It was a lot more than this. So definitely it had an effect worse than expected. So trench warfare with people shooting at each other wasn't really what was anticipated. And when it happened, it turned out that tons and tons of people died. Families destroyed, cities destroyed, not only families destroyed, their generations destroyed. At the same time, it's the industrialization of weapons. It was getting better. The city transforms in a way that's kind of upsetting, but also kind of, I will not say interesting, I will say it's a kind of new thing that is taking place. New in a way that, although it was very upsetting, it was very destructive, it was very frightening, it was very, very scary. A scattered society was emerging. However, at the same time, it was something new and certainly different than it was ever before. So it's this difference that really provoked a lot of writers, a lot of artists rather, including these writers, and also painters and musicians, to really think that they need a new way of art, new kind of art, to make sense of this new world. So art, what was being practiced, was understood as lacking that capacity, lacking that capability to make sense of what is happening outside. Because outside, the view was completely changed. This was a kind of trauma that was new in its nature. So it was having a kind of new effect over the society, over the humanity, everywhere around. So in the light of this destruction, the artist, and we understand these artists they're the most sensitive part of society. They unconsciously or consciously feel about things. They are different from people. So for these artists, it was not only one upsetting phenomenon, it was a kind of new thing. And they needed something new in order to really explain what is happening around, in order to really make sense of what kind of difference has come in the society. So I think this makes certain amount of sense, that why this movement of modernism took birth and why did it start. You have probably seen some modern art and you have probably made fun of it, thinking that it does not really make any sense. You must have heard this term abstract art or art movies, or you would have seen a picture in some gallery where a woman has 3 faces, or a woman has so many eyes, like not only 1 pair of eyes, but 2, 4, 6, 8 eyes, or she has so many faces around, or she has so many hands. So, and you kind of sometimes you make fun of such things. But if something is like that and you find it like that, it gives you a clue, a hint that it probably is a production of this time that we are discussing, modern times, modernism. And here we are particularly discussing this time between 2 world wars. Since the things were not making any sense, the literature, this form of literature that is very close to human life and human activity, how can this make sense? or how can this make a perfect sense, or how can this make sense right in the beginning. It may bring sense, it may make sense while we are moving on with it and we are trying to understand it, but it may not make a 2 plus 2 formula right in the beginning, because things are not very simple here anymore. We have the same thing going in the modernism and modern literature. It doesn't always make sense. In fact, it's a good way to analyze and test whether something belongs to this era or not. As I just mentioned, you can see whether things are making sense or not. Like in the very first lecture, we discussed that our drama has a standard structure. Like Shakespearean drama has 5 acts inside, where one act will open the exposition, the second act will is a kind of inclined action towards climax, and story is building up, complexities and conflicts are building up, and then the climax comes in, probably the third act of drama, where complexities and conflicts are at their peak. And then slowly and gradually in the 4th and 5th acts, these complexities get resolved, and towards the end, either it's a happy ending or any kind of a conclusion that comes up, and the conflicts, they get resolved. This is the standard kind of plot movement that is taking place. However, you may find that this traditional plot movement, plot fabrication, is not very similar to what is happening in the modern drama. You may find, and there you will definitely find differences there. Things are not that simple. Things are not that predictable. Things are not that calculative as they normally are when you are studying the literature from the other times. And that we will be analyzing when we'll be doing the course content studying. Okay, let's move on. And rather, so far we discussed the who and why. Now we need to discuss what about literary modernism. So, what they are getting at with some of their bizarre techniques and why they get there. Now we have gone over the who and the why, and now we are going to take a look at the what of literary modernism. What actually is going on in these works that makes them sound so different, that makes them look so different. We are going to boil it down to 4 things, and these 4 things are non-linearity of plot or sequence of things. Second is irony and satire. Third is voices and the idea of stream of conscious. And the 4th is allusion. Basically, irony and satire, you will find that these people, these writers, they love making fun of stuff and things. That's a characteristic of this time. Now, what is this voices and ideas of stream of conscious? That's going to be really important, because basically these are shout outs to others' works. Stream of consciousness is basically a device of recall. Sometimes it will become as flash from past. Things are flashing in characters' consciousness, and they are getting flashes from past, and sometimes you will observe them as echoes from past, as sound. So 2 senses are involved here in stream of consciousness: sense of seeing and sense of hearing, right? Okay, then allusions. Allusions are basically references from past. These can be understood as shout outs to other works, like you put in a little quote from something else and you're suggesting that the reader might want to take a look at this work and then understand what is happening here. For example, if I am experiencing a kind of conflict, and it's a very serious kind of conflict, and I find myself torn between two different desires of doing something or not doing. I may refer to this very famous Shakespearean dialogue, to be or not to be. Now, if I'm using it in my writing, you may understand what kind of conflict I'm experiencing and what is the intensity and the power of this conflict, because this is not everyday conflict, because you understand the power behind Shakespearean writing and the power behind the emotions that Shakespeare expressed in his writing. So while I'll be using this dialogue, I assume that the listener or the reader will understand the intensity of emotion attached to my conflict. So basically this is what allusions, the use of allusions serves. Now, discussing all these four things one by one, let's talk about non-linearity. As I just mentioned, basically modernist works, they don't always necessarily have plots, first of all. You may find a drama that will not have any plot altogether, or a sequenced plot, or a sequence story. When they do have plots. There may be more than one or two plots. Some are minor, some are major, and at times they are so complex that it gets very difficult to find out relevance between them. And they don't always seem to go in the way that you would expect. So expectations, because our expectations, where from we derive our expectations? We derive our expectations from the standard works that we would have studied so far. Like you would have studied so far, starting from the Greek origin. And we, as I just mentioned, that studying drama, starting from the Greek origin, would make you understand that, okay, drama has a structure, and there are certain acts, and they all contribute certain amount of building up in the plot, in the story. And at one time, at one point, at one stage, the conflict will get resolved. That is what you're expecting in the knowledge of your study so far. But here, things are not taking place the way you would expect. They are different. Like something may start. In the very beginning, you find a very complex situation. So there is no background, nothing happened in the beginning. Thing has started from a complex situation. And another kind of difference, a shocking difference maybe, that things do not end. The end of a drama is a kind of another scene from the drama, and things are the way they have been in the play, and there is no conclusion in the end. Though being readers, being drama viewers, when we are watching it, we would expect that, okay, this has to end somewhere. There has to be end of it. But some things, they finish the way they naturally are, because we understand that in modern literature, drama is serving its purpose of reflecting society, telling you what is happening. In one's life, things are not calculative all the time. Things are not predictable all the time. They start, they may not end. Or probably you are not, being shown how can this be end, or there aren't any specific conclusions to show you. Okay. I hope this is understanding human life. This shouldn't be something unfamiliar for you, because life is like that. There are tons of movies right now or recently that have taken advantage of this philosophy. If you think about Pulp Fiction, a very famous movie, you will see that what kind of plot it has, what kind of story it has, how conflicting it is, how abstract it is. And you must have seen another famous production of the time, Inception. And another great production is Sixth Sense. Even towards the end, a moviegoer, one who is watching the movie, he or she takes time in realizing what he's being shown. After, I think it's way after climax, that someone who is watching the movie will understand that the protagonist is a ghost himself, who is discussing a whole ghost-oriented kind of world. Anyways, let's not distract. The point to focus here is that the modern drama, it is different from the kind of dramas you have been studying so far in literature for the reason that it captures a kind of society that stands somewhere in between two wars. And since war has a kind of effect on humanity that is not very normal, that is not very pleasing, that in itself is kind of chaos and disturbance and unpleasing effect attached and abstractism. So you will find all these disturbed kind of emotions and happenings there in the modern art and modern literature. So in non-linearity of plot or sequence of things, we understand that it's a kind of plotting, it's a kind of story where the one who is watching, the one who is observing, the one who is reading is basically putting together the pieces of puzzle to try to understand, to try to make some meaning out of it. So basically this is the technique. Things are not presented very easy in a very understandable and predictable form. They are presented in as jumbled up pieces of a puzzle, as scattered pieces of a puzzle, and you being reader, you being the observer and understanding the reasons behind this scattered form of literature, put things together, put them together, and then try to understand and figure out what is happening. This is the way writer is trying to convey the scatteredness, the ugliness, the chaotic situation of the society around him. Alright, so now irony and satire. It plays, these devices, they play a big role because these people are always saying things halfway. Now, you need to understand all these things in relevance with each other. When a normal human being will try to make sense of things. If things are not clear, the person will try to make it clear, and by giving examples, by giving illustrations. This is a very normal standard way of communication. But here, the communication is on purpose, not normal. The writer or the producer of the meaning, the one who is conveying the meaning, wants it to be ambiguous because his thought process is not very clear. He himself is possessing this attribute, and this attribute reflects in whatever he writes. So they, on purpose, they would leave the things halfway and then would let you assume, okay, what kind of meaning it is making. Verbal irony is, now you will find different types of irony in these plays. You will find verbal irony, you will find situational irony, you will find dramatic irony, you will find Socratic irony. Verbal irony is just saying one thing and meaning its opposite. It's a kind of verbal irony where you are saying something, but what you mean is basically the totally opposite of it. For example, if I am the one who would not like cats, and on the top of it, if I'm talking to somebody who is very dear to me or who is kind of on formal terms with me, where I cannot really reveal what I'm feeling, and his or her cat crawls around my feet or over my leg, and the person is asking me, how do you feel? How are you? And I would say, oh yeah, I'm fantastic. So here what I'm saying is not exactly what I mean. I'm feeling horrible, but I'm saying I feel fantastic. I feel awesome. Knowingly deep inside that what I feel is quite awful, right? So this is kind of verbal irony. Then what irony basically means is the use of words to convey a meaning that is the opposite of it. When you are saying things which are producing the opposite meaning, you are producing verbal irony. Now the other would be kind of, it can also be a situational irony, like if someone like a celebrity gets up and he's talking about the dangers of smoking, and that it's injurious to health, and right after that you find that person joining a party and where the celebrity is smoking himself. So it's kind of situational irony that you are coming across. Saying something but doing opposite of it. Then you have this kind of Socratic irony, that means that pretended ignorance in discussion. Oh, it is happening every day in our life. You would see that two friends are sitting together, and definitely there would be three friends. Let's say there are three friends, and one friend, like if I am the one and I have two friends, and one of my friends, she tells me that, you see, Iram, this happened yesterday between, her and the one and the second character, the two characters. Something happened between them yesterday, and one of them comes up and tells me. I say, okay, fine. So one of those two characters again come up. The third character comes to me and say, you know what happened yesterday between I and Maria? If there are two characters, and I would say, no, I don't know what happened. So this is kind of Socratic irony, where although I know deep inside what is the thing, I pretend to be entirely ignorant of it, that I don't know. This is a kind of Socratic irony. Now, we discussed what is irony basically, then we discussed the verbal form of irony, we discussed the situational form of irony. Now we are discussing what is dramatic irony. Dramatic irony is inherent in speeches or a situation of a drama, and it is understood by the audience but not grasped by the character in the play. It's a kind of situation where audience would know what is happening, what is that secret in the drama that the character does not know. So it is kind of dramatic irony. So we talked about non-linearity of plot or sequence of things, and we talked about irony and satire. And here we are discussing what's of literary modernism. Now moving on to voices and the idea of stream of consciousness. Stream of consciousness is a term that is going to be pretty synonymous with people like James Joyce and Virginia Woolf. These writers, they employed this technique a lot in their work. Idea of stream of consciousness, voices are basically voices. This typical term is from poems, from poetry. T.S. Eliot makes a lot of use of voices in his work. Idea of stream of consciousness is more a part of drama as genre of literature, and we find James Joyce and Virginia Woolf is kind of full of this technique. Over here, the writer tends to get into the consciousness of a character, and when you try to get into the consciousness of human being, it's not made up of present altogether. It has a kind of very close relation with past. It can be a recent past, it can be a remote past. So basically your consciousness is a kind of movement between your knowledge of present, your knowledge of recent past, and your knowledge of remote past. And you are switching between these times and try to make sense of, try to make meaning of things which are happening around you. And this is what writer is doing. In order to understand a character, in order to understand how a character would think in a particular kind of situation, the writers will take you into the consciousness of that character. Now, how will they take it? How will they bring this very effect out? By telling you that the character is having a flashback from the past. A character is having voices, echoes from the past, and this is how his or her understanding is developed, and then it is expressed by the character. Okay, the fourth thing that I would like to talk about is allusions. As I mentioned earlier, that allusions are basically references from the past. where the writer wants to give you reference of a complete thought that has already been talked about by someone else, but this writer wants to include that complete thought into his or her work, and maybe wants to include as it is or would like to attach another aspect with it. I gave you an example of to be or not to be. So that is one kind of allusion that is quoted, and we being readers would understand that this is from Shakespearean play, and this refers to that intense kind of conflict that a character would feel within. Okay, so what we discussed so far is we have looked at why did we feel the need of modern literature, what led to shape the literature as modern literature as it is and as we are studying, who are the ones who are basically famous writers, why did they create this kind of literature, and why does it look like and why does it sound like the way it is, what are the reasons, what are the influences. Now what we are going to talk next is we are going to discuss the social significance of the modern drama, where we will be discussing a major concept of this era, of this time, that is art for art's sake, and art as the mirror of life. Art for art's sake presupposes an attitude of aloofness on the part of the writer, the artist, towards the complex struggle of life. It's like what he's presenting is a kind of fancy, what he's presenting is a kind of ideal situation, what he's presenting is a kind of dream that he's sharing with you. He must rise above the ebb and tide of life, the fantasies of life. He is to be merely an artistic conjurer of beautiful forms. It's like I used the word conjurer. Conjurer is a juggler, you know, or is a magician who would like to do some magical tricks. Like if I'm a magician and I am doing this magical trick, and I would do some kind of trick, abracadabra, and I will open up my hands, and you will see lots of flowers, lots of colors, and you know, snow and or beautiful things coming out of my hand. And who do we present it for? Magic. You would see that kids, they are very much attracted towards these magical tactics and these magical tricks because they fancy beauty, they fancy pleasing things, they like to have beautiful surprises. So this is what this phenomena is, that when you are producing art for art's sake, you are basically presenting an ideal kind of situation to viewers who are living in a society, who are living in everyday life where there are not so many pleasing things. So what you will do, you will give them entertainment, you will show a fanciful and ideal kind of thing on the screen, an ideal kind of life that they would like to live, to please them, to bring happiness to them. And this is what is happening right now in our society, in our local setting. I am talking about our local setting, our local television. You would see sitcoms, you will see dramas, you will see our movies. What they are presenting, this is not real, this is not real, this is not happening in our society. They present a kind of fanciful, fabricated vision of society. Things are not that beautiful the way they look on the screen. So here art is being produced for art's sake. That is not the attitude of modern art. Modern art, the art that we are discussing, the drama, the form of drama that we are discussing, this arts for art's sake attitude is not the attitude of modern drama, which is preeminently reflects the mirror of life. And now I will take you back to what we were discussing. What is being mirrored here? It's that time period where World War I is ending up, and it's the beginning of World War II. So what kind of life will that be? How beautiful life will that be? How normal things will be in that kind of society? and how chaotic they can be, how abstract they can be, we can have an idea here. So if art is mirroring, what kind of mirror you will have? You will see all kind of ugliness in that, all kind of abstractism, all kind of chaos, all kind of scatteredness, all kind of shabby things, things which are not in any form, in fact, altogether. Okay, the artist being a part of life, you know, here artists, they are very sensitive. They cannot detach themselves from the society. When the society is struggling, when the society is suffering, the artist will suffer. The artist will, if the artist will not suffer, at least he will mirror the struggle. He will mirror the society's suffering. So he himself cannot detach his work from the events and occurrences that pass panorama-like before his eyes and impressing themselves upon his emotional and intellectual vision. So basically the major difference you will find between the times before the modern era and in the modern era is that from the beginning, if not entirely, most of the work, most of the art is for art's sake. But now, in the modern era, art is mirroring life. Art is mirroring society. So it's one major difference. Moving on. The attitude, you will find this attitude that in art for art's sake, the attitude of writer is, the artist is aloofness, detaching himself from what is happening in the world, no matter how ugly that is, no matter how shabby that is, what you will see on the screen from the writer is beautiful. All right? However, in the modern art, you will not see any beauty if the beauty does not exist. So what you will see is something that exists, and that we understand is not beauty at all. So the work will mirror the life, mirror the life of the people of that time, will mirror the society of that time. The modern art is, in the words of Augustin Berg, a lay preacher popularizing the pressing questions of his time. This is the modern art. And it is not necessarily because his aim is to preach. His aim is to establish something. Writer's aim is to preach something. But he simply, because he can best express himself by being true to his life. Here, what we are studying, we studied that so far in drama, the form of drama was being used in order to preach, in order to improve society, in order to convey certain kinds of norms which are agreeable by the society. And they would like to embed those things into the social vision of a society. But here we understand that modern art does not aim at preaching, does not aim at teaching all the time. It aims at, it is telling all these things. The modern art conveys all these things because this is how the writers can best use their skills, by being true to what is happening. In fact, they are incapable of even developing that kind of fanciful a form of art. They are not capable of doing that anymore. So what they are doing, they are simply resisting this, you will say this kind of, they are resisting making things out. They are being natural. They are reflecting what they are feeling. Shaw, O'Casey, Beckett, Dostoevsky, Emerson, Walt, Whitman, Tolstoy, Ibsen, Sternberg, and a host of other writers. You will see this is happening in their work. And then more important, they compel far greater attention than the writers could compel before them. Their creative genius, imbued with the spirit of sincerity and truth, it strikes root where the ordinary word often falls on barren soil. Like, you will feel that this form of art is deeper, is richer, and a way far more appealing to the ones who are watching it, to the ones who are reading it, than any other period of drama could ever have been. Because that was not the real life. And when the real life is depicted, people took interest in it because they could relate themselves with what is written in the real modern drama, or what is being screened in modern times. All right, so moving on, any mode of creative work which with true perception portrays social wrongs earnestly and boldly may be a greater menace to our social fabric and a more powerful inspiration than the wildest harangue of the soapbox orator. So people are taking interest this kind of work because they find it more close to life. It is not a soapbox orator who is standing behind a rostrum and speaking, because he does not know what is happening with people who are standing there in front of him with no shelter, maybe under the sun, maybe under the rain. He cannot feel the agony of those people. It's like being with them on the same platform and then speaking. So this form of art was very much applauded, and people really took great interest in this form of art. Unfortunately, so far, the society has so far looked upon the theatre as a place of amusement only, and it is happening in our very local setting as well, exclusive of ideas and inspirations, because the modern drama of Europe has still recently been inaccessible in printed form to the average theatregoer in the country, and audience have to content themselves with the interpretations, or rather misinterpretations, of dramatic critics. As a result, the social significance of the modern drama has well nigh been lost to the general public, and they were restricted to the kind of interpretation what they are able to receive from the ones who are making meaning for them. As to native drama, America has so far produced very little worthy to be considered drama in a social light. Lacking the cultural and evolutionary tradition of the old world, America has necessarily first to appear the soil out of which sprouts creative genius. The 101 springs of local and sectional life must have time to furrow their common channel into the seething sea of life at large. America could not so far produce its own social drama, but in proportion as the crystallization progress and sectional and national questions become clarified as fundamentally social problems, the drama develops. Indeed, very commendable in the beginnings in this direction, but they are producing drama that is presenting society. And same is happening over in our local setting in Pakistan. We have both streams of dramas. One stream of drama is where drama is being produced for art's sake, where it's all fancy, it's all idealism, it's all life is being mirrored as only beauty, only pleasure. And the other stream of life is where life is being shown the way it is in reality. So we are having both streams almost everywhere in each society. Now we need to understand functions and characters of modern drama. The modern drama, as all modern literature, mirrors the complex struggle of life, as we discussed. The struggle which, whatever its individual or topical expression, ever has its roots in the depth of human nature and social environment, and hence is, to that extent, universal. Such literature, such drama is at once the reflex and the inspiration of mankind in its eternal seeking for things higher and better. Perhaps those who learn the great truths of the social, trivial in the school of life, do not need the message of the drama. But there is another class whose number is larger, for whom that message is indispensable. So, why do we need this? Why do we need to understand this genre of literature? Because not all of us, some of us are literate enough to understand the realities of life. But not all of us do get this opportunity to have enough knowledge to understand what is happening and what should happen, or what are their rights. So this drama was being used as a form to express the realities of life, not to those who already understood, but to those who could not get the chance of getting informed, of getting this information. So the modern drama as a genre mirrors the complex struggle of life, and the inspiration is to seek truth, to convey truth, not only understand what is happening, but to convey it as it is. And the philosophy was, and this movement, it got very strong because it had truth inside, that the philosophy was either to become part of the process or be left behind. Although in the beginning these writers, they faced a lot of trouble, and they were criticized a lot. However, in the later stage, when the drama held its roots strongly in the society, because the public, the people, the movie-goers, the people who would watch these dramas, they received their admiration and their agreeable responses, and they gained enough strength to to stand fast and go on with whatever they decided. And this is the social significance which differentiate modern dramatic art from art for art's sake. It is the dynamite which undermines superstitious, shakes the social pillars, and prepares men and women for the reconstruction. Because unless you are told what are the damages in the society, you cannot expect a layman to play any part in reconstruction, in reforming. So an idea behind, although it was not to teach, it was to inform, but an expectation was that if you are informing people as individuals and as part of society, then being informed, they will be able to produce, they will be able to present a productive role, being individuals in reforming the society, in reconstructing the society. Henrik Ibsen, in his letter, writes that the state is the curse of the individual, and he's writing this letter he's writing this letter to George Brands shortly after the Paris Commune, and it is written in that framework, in that frame of time after the World War I. He says that the state is the curse of the individual. How has the national strength of Persia been purchased? By the sinking of the individual in a political and geographical formula? The state must go. That will be a revolution which will find me on its side. Undermine the idea of the state. Set up in its place spontaneous action and the idea that spiritual relationship is the only thing that makes for unity. And you will start the elements of a liberty which will be something worth possessing. So you can understand this precise speech of Henrik Ibsen that is very much portraying the thought process of the writers against the social happenings in that time. However, the state was not the only thing that Henrik Ibsen would show his opinions about or would show his emotions about. Ibsen consistently strove to uproot every stone of their social structure. Everything that contributes in making the society the way it was. It's not only the politics of the time or the authorities of the time or some particular agencies, some particular activities that he's criticizing. He is criticizing the society in general. Each and everything that contributes to make a society the way it is. He thundered his fiery indictment against the 4 cardinal sins of modern society. Now, what are these 4 cardinal sins? He talks about, above all he talked about the lie inherent in our social arrangements. He talks about sacrifice and duty. He talks about the twin crushes that fetter the spirit of man. He talks about the narrow-mindedness and pettiness of provincialism. And you will find all of 4 themes in his work, The Doll's House, that we are going to study. So strongly did Ibsen feel on these matters that in none of his work he loses sight of any of them. Indeed, they reoccur again and again in everything, whatever he wrote. These issues from the keynote to the revolutionary significance of his dramatic works, as well as to the psychology of Henrik Ibsen himself, will contribute to understand not only the philosophy of the writer who produces, but of the philosophy of the writers of that very time. It is therefore not very surprising that most of the interpreters and admirers of Ibsen so enthusiastically accept his art and yet remain utterly indifferent to, not to say ignorant of, the message contained in it. Because it was not only the attitude of the writers, but the attitude of the receivers too. That is mainly because they are, in the words of Mrs. Elving, so pitifully afraid of the light. They were afraid of accepting the ills being conveyed by the writers, specifically by Henrik Ibsen, because if you accept them, if you acknowledge them, that's a way towards acceptance. And if you accept them, there's a hope. There are chances that they are reconstructed. So the very acknowledgement, if you go into the history and read about it, the very acknowledgement of these things being produced, you may find it missing. What we discussed in today's talk, we try to understand modernism as a literary movement. We try to understand the social significance of the modern drama. And the discussion included the causes that lead to modernism, what are the major themes that modernism addresses, what are the themes that modernism address, and what are the themes that Henrik Ibsen address in his work particularly. The characteristics of the modern theatre, what makes modern literature, what is that, who is there, and why things are the way they are. Then what is the social significance of modern drama and how can we relate this significance with contemporary times? What is native drama? What is the role of American drama? What is the role of Scandinavian drama? The functions and characteristics of modern drama, and the 4 cardinal sins of modern society that Ibsen throws light upon. So I think after knowing these things about modern literature, we are getting some prepared for our third lecture. And if I share the agenda of third lecture with you, this is we will be discussing some ground rules to study drama, because now preparing our basic understanding of drama and of modern drama in specific, I guess we are getting ready to start with our content, the course contents, and we will be starting with the Doll's House by Henrik Ibsen. But before that we start our study of a drama, we need to understand some basic rules how to study a drama, and in that we will study what is drama, what is conflict, what is this rising and falling action, what is plot, denouement, what is catharsis, how to go deeper in the writings to make meaning, how to understand themes, what is text, subtext, what is imagery, symbolism, what is the use of metaphor in drama, this ambiguity, how does writer make use of such devices to contribute to the meaning that he is conveying, irony, allusion, how to analyze, and what is the role of comprehension, what are the stages of comprehension, how to draw conclusions. And then we'll move on to the Doll's House as the very first script we'll be studying. We'll be studying the writer's background, the themes and structures of the drama, and we will have a precise overview of the drama itself, the Doll's House. I think it's quite enough for today's talk, and with the sharing of agenda for lecture 3, I'll be going off today, and we'll be seeing you inshallah the next time for third lecture of modern drama. Allah Hafiz.